So without further ado, I'll put your hands together for Jeff Lynn, and welcome to the stage.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for sticking around. We're in the bottom of the ninth. Feel free to grab a beer early if you want. This is not a serious talk at all. My name is Jeff Lynn. I'm the CEO of a company called Bust Out. We design and build websites, mobile apps, and digital experiences. This talk has nothing to do with what I do for a living. This is about Airbnb as a side hustle. It started in 2007 when I bought a house and was a single dude, a small house, about 1,000 square feet, story and a half, 3 bedrooms. And then I proposed to my girlfriend, got married, we got a dog, we had a kid, another kid, and then when Eleanor came around, the little engine that could, in 2016, we realized that our 1,000 square foot house was just way too small for this family of 5 plus a dog. And so we decided that we needed to move. Then, of course, the question is, all right, what do we do with the home? The obvious answer is you sell it. Second, slightly less obvious answer, but second option is, well, find a renter. You know, we can keep this property. It's in Uptown. It's a good neighborhood. Get a renter and become landlords. My preference was to just let's try something. Let's experiment a little bit. And so we have options. There are a lot of home sharing platforms out there on the market today. Obvious ones, everyone knows Airbnb, VRBO or Vrbo or whatever they're called now. Homestay, Zeus, Avail, Sonder, Agoda, D-Travel, Landing, Plum, Guide, Homeroom. There's probably about a dozen more. Full disclosure, D-Travel is a client of ours. Check them out. They're pretty cool. We just launched their web platform 3 days ago. It's the first decentralized autonomous organization that is launching their own cryptocurrency, the TRVL token. This is not a pitch for them. I was just kind of excited about it. So we decided to do Airbnb, or actually say I decided to do Airbnb. My wife just wanted to get rid of the house. I convinced her to let me experiment with an Airbnb. So I figured, how hard can this be? Take some photos, list it on Airbnb, make some house rules. And the only house rules I could think of was like, all right, I don't want any parties and I don't want any smoking in the house. I'm like, yeah, that should be good, right? No, this is what happened. We got a lot of parties at our house. Our very first guest was a lovely woman from France who was visiting her daughter who was graduating from the U of M. We were off to a fantastic start, became friends with her. She invited us to her house in the south of France. I've got a place to stay anytime I want to go there. That was amazing. Our very second guest, we got a call at 3 in the morning from our alarm system. The smoke alarm was going off, and they asked, do we need a fire truck? And of course, I'm not at the house. I'm about a mile away. I said, yes, send the fire trucks. I don't know if the house is burning down or not. So I jump out of bed at 3 in the morning, get my clothes on. I rush down Hennepin Avenue to the house. Fire trucks are there. They're actually pulling away, which is a good sign. I go in the house, and I scared the living lights out of about 22 teenage girls. And I'm like, where's the fire? They're like, there's no fire. I'm like, who's smoking? Nobody's smoking. I'm like, are you guys drinking? They're like, no, we're not drinking. And I'm like, looking around, and there was a birthday cake, there was a bunch of 2-liter bottles of Coke, and a bunch of 18-year-old girls having a birthday party, very innocent. I'm like, well, what happened? One of the girls said, I pushed this button. I'm like, the button with the fire symbol on it? Yes. All right, don't do that. Another disaster came when I went to a house after a guest checked out, and there was a really odd smell in the house, something I'd never smelled before. I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't feel safe, first of all. And so I'm like, who do I call? I called the fire department. I'm like, there's a smell. Can you come here smell this? Like, nah, we don't do that. I'm like, all right, who do I call? They're like, I call the police. And for the record, I voted yes, but there's a use for the police sometimes. I wish there was a department of weird smells. I would have called them, but called the cops. Police officer shows up at the door, kind of looks at this place funny. He goes, we were here last night. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, you guys were having a party. I'm like, no, not you guys, my guests. And this is when I realized that things were not going well. I was failing at being an Airbnb host. People were violating my house rules. Quick question, what do you think that thing on the bottom left is? Anybody? It's a security tag for a piece of clothing. It took me a long time to figure that out. But somebody was shoplifting and leaving their security tags in the house. Broken window, police reports. Somebody left their cocaine and heroin and a bedazzled bottle of Hennessy. So I needed a better strategy to figure out how to deal with the parties. And I'm like, I think I'm kind of an innovative guy. Like I like to solve problems or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? Snap map. If there's a party going on at the house, people are going to be posting to Snapchat, and there's going to be a heat map over my house. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, there's a guy coming into town from Chicago, and he said, it's my 30th birthday. I have a bunch of friends in Minneapolis, and I'm coming to stay at your Airbnb. I said, well, dude, happy birthday, but man, there are no parties allowed, and there's no smoking allowed in the house. And he said, totally cool. I promise you, I will not have a party in the house. Saturday night, about midnight, I checked the Snap map, and sure enough, there's a red dot right above my house. I'm like, God darn it, this guy's having a party. So you click on it, I see the snaps, and it's him alone in the house, singing songs to nobody in the entire living room, but he's smoking a lot of weed. And so I kind of let that one go. I'm like, all right, man, I turned 30 at 1.2. I had a party. He didn't throw a party. He violated 1 out of 2 rules. I'll let it go. Still, needed to figure out a way to get better at this. So here's my advice. After many, many failed guests, dealing with problems, dealing with the police, dealing with the fire department, I've learned a lot of things. So I'm going to boil it down to 5 steps to Airbnb inner peace. Step 1, it took me a few years to figure this one out. Set your minimum night stay to 5 or more nights. Okay, what do you think happened right after I did that? The party scene stopped immediately. This solved my biggest problem with people coming to the house, having parties, trashing the place. Not only that, but less turnovers. It became a little bit slower paced, which is what I wanted. I want, as a side hustle, you want this to be something that's hands-off, easy, passive income, basically do as little work as possible, and setting a minimum night stay to 5 or more nights really, really helped. Number 2, allow pets. Okay, this sounds a little counterintuitive, right? Because imagine if you were gonna invite guests to your house and they're like, I wanna bring my dog. Like, well, it's gonna poop in the house or pee on furniture, it's got fur, it's gonna, just dirty. And so a lot of hosts, including myself early on, we did not allow pets. Well, it turns out, how many of you are pet owners? Okay. Do you care for your animal? Do you love your animal? Are you responsible with your animal? He's shaking his head no. Turns out people who care for animals are generally pretty responsible people. And when we started allowing families or guests with pets, they vacuumed the house for us. And they took care of the place. And it actually started to work out. Second side benefit of allowing pets is, since most hosts do not allow pets, what do you think happens to the competition? Well, when there's a guest coming to town and they're like, I need an Airbnb and I need to check the box that says allow pets. Well, your competition all of a sudden just shrank. And so now our house was booking a lot of people that had pets. Raise your nightly rate. This one's fairly obvious. The side hustle, you're in it to make some money. And so raise your rates. We started out pretty low. I'm happy to talk numbers with anybody at the happy hour, but just briefly, we started off around $90 a night for a 3-bedroom house, sleeps 5 people. That was on the lower end of our competition. And then we just slowly started raising the rates up. And of course, as you raise your rates, you see a few less bookings, but ultimately we've found the optimal point where the nightly rate was high enough to compensate for the fewer bookings, and revenue stayed the same. Offer significant discounts for stays over 30 days. Okay, this was a game changer. So in March of 2020, we all know what happened. We lost 3 months worth of bookings, just overnight. All of our bookings pulled out. They were 5 to 10 night stays, and they all just vanished. A lot of hosts at that time panicked and either sold their houses, got long-term rentals, or just did something different. They pulled out of Airbnb. We decided that we would just stick it out and see what happens. And we tried a lot of different innovative things. We tried to attract homeschooling families. We tried to attract longer-term stays by setting a huge discount. We discounted our rate 55%. If you were willing to book 30 days or more, you got a 55% discount. What ended up happening is we were booked up 99% capacity from May 2020 through June 2021. We had people coming in from New York City. New York was ground zero. The place was falling apart. People were getting sick. A lot of people were dying. Families were getting out of New York City. And turns out there's a lot of Minnesotans who moved to New York who are ready to come back and work from home. And so we had Minnesotan families come back from New York City, and they just needed a place to stay to wait for the pandemic to pass. And so we got 3-month bookings, 6-month booking, 5-month booking. So we had 4 guests over the course of 12 or 13 months. That was the most passive income I've ever had. We basically did nothing. They owned the house, they rented, it was their place, and we just had to sit back and just make sure that they were okay. There is a thing with the neighbors. If you live in a house and and the house next to you is an Airbnb, sure, that's slightly less desirable. I don't think I would like that myself. So we try and be the best possible hosts for the neighborhood as we can. And so, the party scene was terrible for the neighbors, but we kind of solved that problem. And then I started basically greeting all of the neighbors and saying, hey, we're running an Airbnb. Here's my number. If you ever see anything or need anything, you just call me. Please don't call the cops first. Call me. We'll take care of it. And we offered them discounts. Turns out there's a lot of people who have family coming to visit. Maybe their condo's too small or their house is too small, or they just don't like their in-laws that much. And they're willing to put their guests in our house, and we're going to give them a really nice discount. And so not only did we help them out, but we made good neighbors. So these were all good business lessons. If you do decide to do an Airbnb, try these tips. I think these are born out of my own failures. But there is one thing that I've learned that I think is really, really cool, really valuable, and hopefully the reason why you're all here today. I'm basically running a hotel, right? I've figured out so many things. I've figured out what carpet doesn't stain. I figured out what landscaping is maintenance-free, and I have figured out how to fold a fitted sheet. So, this first time at Minibar ever. A fitted sheet is basically a 3-dimensional shape, right? A flat sheet, it's easy. It's 2 dimensions. You know how to fold a flat sheet. You just go fold, fold, fold. It's flat. How many people get frustrated with fitted sheets? Yeah. You do this, and then it kind of looks like this when you're done. And man, it's just if you have that tick that I do, you want everything to be nice and perfect. So here's a 3-dimensional, basically a hemisphere. Imagine a hemisphere. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to fold the hemisphere, flip it inside out against itself. The way you do that is you put your fingertips in the corners here. You kind of flip it over like this. Whoops. Hold on one second. Like this. You flip it over, and then you have sort of a hemisphere, right? And you've got these 2 corners that are now flipped over against themselves. And then you do it again. So you take the hemisphere, you fold it kind of into like a fourth of a hemisphere, take your corners, meet them up, flip one end over the other. And what you have now is something that is relatively flat. And so I have this, a little difficult without a table, but I'm going to try and do it here. You kind of lay it down, and then you fold it into thirds. So you take one side, fold it in, take the other side, you fold that in, and then you fold it up into thirds again. A third, and what you're left with is a really nicely folded sheet. You're welcome. Okay, kind of joking aside, business tips aside, parties aside, I have learned quite a bit through being a host. And the one thing that I think is really, truly my take-home message is that it's all about the people. You're their host, they are your guests. It's about them and their experiences. What started off as a side hustle really turned into an experience for me. I've welcomed 387 people from about 40 states, 6 continents, 18 countries, and they're all from one planet. It has taught me that humanity is wonderful. We've had a really tough last year and a half, the world has, and we've still had people coming to our house. Some of them I don't meet, a lot of them I do. Some of them I keep in touch today, and they're people from all around the world. So if anybody ever tells you that Minneapolis or the Twin Cities is flyover country, you can tell them they're wrong. There's people from all around the world. There's a guest from China in my house right now. But hosts all around the world are experiencing what I'm experiencing, which is when you open your heart and you open your house to somebody else, a complete stranger, really magical things will happen. They're going to have an experience to remember, and they're going to create memories that they're going to remember forever. Thank you.